Hello friends, and welcome back to Random Hearts. Today I want to share with you what we're doing in the month of February to prepare for our next garden season. I did share what we did last month, and if you would like to watch that January video, I will link that up in the cards. There might be some important information in that video that you will need before watching this video. As for the month of February, this is mostly a planning and layout month for us. There are some parts of the world that will be either growing right now or getting prepared with seedlings, and we are not part of that situation. We actually cannot put anything outdoors clear until the end of May, first week of June. So our last frost date is somewhere between May 31st and June 6th, and then we can't start anything indoors before certain dates, because if I do start them too soon, they might languish or just not do as well when they go outdoors. So let's talk about what I'm going to be doing today. The first thing I want to do is set up my garden on grid paper. I'm going to actually build the layout with the 5 beds just as I did last year. In fact, I'm just going to lay a piece of graph paper over the top of the one from last year and just trace it. I have not added any new beds to my garden in the last year, so this should work just fine. The first thing I need to be mindful of when I am looking at my seeds and deciding where things need to go is crop rotation. So last year, I have my template of what I used, where I used it last year, and so I will look at that as reference. I do not want to be putting anything in the exact same spot as I did last year. Plants need different nutrients, and they deplete the soil of different nutrients. And if I was to put the same plant in that garden spot year after year after year, it would actually ruin the soil, and it might make it so that nothing can grow there. So I want to make sure that I am rotating crops. I am not putting the same plant in the same location from year to year, which is why it's super important to make sure you keep notes so that you can remember where you put things the year before. And I want to make sure that as much as possible, I am not putting things in the same spot. The next thing I want to be mindful of is a concept called companion planting. When I am laying out my gardens and deciding where things need to go in each garden bed, I want to make sure that those plants will work together, that they will help each other out, help each other to become pest-free, help each other with disease, and even possibly flavor. So I am fairly new to companion planting, and in fact last year was the first year I did companion planting, but I learned some very valuable things, and I will link a couple of the websites down in the description that I've been using. But like I said, I'm not an expert on this, so I would encourage you to Google this concept. But last year I learned that tomatoes, their companion plants are basil and marigolds. So of course I planted those together, right next to each other. Basically, there is some research that says that basil helps tomatoes have a better flavor, and that marigolds help to keep bugs and pests off of tomatoes. So why not plant them right next to each other? If you're going to have them in your garden anyway, put them right next to each other so they can help each other out. Now, there is a counterpoint to this because there are enemy plants as well, meaning that if you plant them side by side, they will take the nutrients from each other and neither will do well, or one will do better than the other. So it's important to know which plants can be planted right next to each other and which plants need to be separated. The next thing I need to be mindful of is light conditions. So my garden beds are located in an area of my yard that used to get full sun, but I have a neighbor's tree that volunteered right along the fence line. And as that tree has grown, it has created more and more shade for my garden, which is not good for most garden vegetables. Most garden vegetables do want full sun. So I am going to be looking at the backs of my packets and trying my hardest to get those plants that I know need the most sun, like tomatoes and peppers. Those need to be in the beds that are farthest away from that tree so that it is not getting shadowed and getting shade from the tree all day. I also need to be aware that my shed can sometimes create shade, and so can my fence. So knowing your light conditions in your garden is very important to knowing where to put plants, especially certain plants that need full sun or full shade. Finally, I need to consider how many of each type of plant I want to put into my garden when I am putting the layout together. I want to make sure that I have enough of what we like to eat, and maybe if it's something new, I'm just trying it out. I don't want to put too much of it in case it doesn't grow. So like last year, I grew onions for the first time. I did not put a ton in because I wasn't wanting to take up valuable real estate in my garden on something I didn't know if it would do well or not here. So the other thing is sometimes you find that you are not producing enough of something in your garden and you want to produce more. For instance, we grew cabbage last year and I only grew 4 head of cabbage. And it was one variety, and it was very apparent within just a couple of weeks that that was not going to be enough for us. We eat a lot of cabbage during the summer. I make a lot of coleslaw. We eat it in salads, and we eat it in fish tacos. And I am very interested in learning how to ferment and make sauerkraut. So this year I have chosen to do 2 varieties of cabbage. I am going to increase the amount of cabbage I'm putting in. So each variety will have 3 head. And then I know based on my template for square foot gardening that each cabbage needs approximately 1 square foot of space in my garden. So that's why I put it on grid paper. That grid paper I can set up so that I can see exactly 1 square foot and I can know what I can fit into 1 square foot of space. I know I am going to need 6 square feet of space for my cabbage this year. And if I cannot fit it into a certain location in one of my beds, that's why I use pencil. So I can erase that and move it to a different bed. So these are some of the things that I will be considering and looking at when I am putting my garden layout together and deciding which plants need to go where, what conditions they need, what plants they can be next to, and how many of each plant I want to put in. Now that I have my garden laid out on grid paper and I know exactly how many of each plant I'm going to need and what seeds I'm actually using this year, I am going to sort through those seeds and put them into 2 categories. The 2 categories are seeds that need to be direct sown and seeds that will need to be sown indoors and later transplanted outside. So I've already done that and I've got them in bins here. I am going to go ahead and put the seeds that go directly into the soil. Those are going to get set aside because we actually cannot put those out into the ground until the soil conditions are correct. Usually it's a temperature thing, and so those won't go outside till at least May, the end of May, early part of June. But you will need to look at your seed packets. Some even need warmer temperatures than our soil is at the first week of June. So I'll need to be mindful of that when I am sowing those outdoors. But for right now, we're not going to worry about these outdoor sown seeds. We're going to only worry about the ones that need to be sown inside. Knowing when to start your seedlings indoors can be very tricky, and it is critical to the health of the plant. So last year I started some cabbage and some onions way too early. I started them at the end of February, and by March, the first part of April, they wanted to be outside, and we just did not have the conditions to put them out yet. So you need to know that there's a reason the packets tell you to backtrack by 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 4 weeks. You have to know your last frost date. And I will link in the description a few of the websites that you can go to get that information. You just need to type in your zip code, and then it will give you all of that information for when you have your last frost and your first frost and how long your growing season is typically. Now, there is some discrepancy between these websites, and so I had to kind of do a median range here. My first one I went to said that my last frost date was May 31st, which I know is not true. But another one I went to said that my last frost date was June 6th, which is probably closer to the truth. But I had 2 of them I went to that said June 4th. So I am going to be putting June 4th on my calendar, and we are going to be backtracking or counting backwards from that date to determine when I need to start certain seeds. So you might be wondering, how do I calculate exactly when to start my seeds indoors? And this is how I do it. I do find my last frost date, and if you've got discrepancies between websites like I did, just make a median, average, whatever, and plop it onto your calendar. These are averages anyways. Frost dates are not set in stone. You can have frost up to 2 weeks after your frost date. The probability is just less. So today we are going to be doing just 2 of my seed packets. I did not want to show you all of them. That would take forever. But today we are going to go ahead and put down our kale onto our calendar. Now, kale can be sown outdoors, but I want my kale to have a jump start. And so, and I also want it to be our hot season, which we go from cold to hot very quickly here. Anyways, I have 2 different varieties here. We'll look at this one first. This one has this cute little picture, nice little map of the United States, and honestly, it's a waste of time and effort because it says to sow them outdoors. I know I'm not doing that. So, and then on top of it, it is color-coded, and my little map of Wyoming, it's really hard to tell whether I am blue or I am green. So I am not going to use this packet as my determiner for that time frame, but I will use this one from Johnny Seeds. I will be using the winter borer. This one right here tells me that I do need to sow those seeds approximately 4 to 6 weeks before I want to transplant them. So I'm going to go ahead and take that last frost date and count back 4 to 6 weeks. So 1 week, 2 weeks, 3, 4. I'm going to go further and make sure that this is planted far enough ahead. 5, 6. So if you can see that, I will be planting my kale around the 23rd of April. So I will go ahead and plop that onto my calendar, and that's how I determined when I will plant my kale. Now that I have all the start dates on my calendar for when I am starting all those seeds indoors, I can go ahead and start thinking about the items I will need to actually do the seed starting. So the first thing I think about is light. Just like light outside, you are going to need some kind of a light source in your home that mimics sunlight. Now there are LED lamps that you can buy. There are also light bulbs you can add to a lamp or a ceiling light, but I have found that the best way to get light to your plants is with an actual grow station. Last year, I bought a grow station. Actually, it is 3 stacking units. I will link that down in the description if you're interested in looking at it. It is from Gardener Supply, and there are 3 units. They all have light sources that are LED, and it has been great. Last year we had really good production off of it, but it is an investment and definitely something that I was lacking prior to that. I had started seeds in a south-facing window prior to that, and it's just not the same. It's very difficult to get the right light conditions with indirect lighting. The other thing that I need to be aware of is that plants need air circulation, and a lot of times in my rural area, it is very difficult to find a fan this time of year. So you might need to be ordering stuff like that online. So I have 3 small clip-on fans that go onto my grow station, and those provide air circulation for my plants, because not only do they need light, they need air circulation. Now for the soil. As for soil, it is not all the same. I am going to need to make sure that I have some soil that is for starting seeds. They usually call it seed starting soil. It is much loftier. It has very little heavy consistency to it. It won't hold water quite as well. And so little roots can grow through that really easily and do much better in seed starting soil. So you'll need to start looking for that. The other things that you might need are a heat mat. I did notice that a couple of my seeds need a temperature of 75 to 90 degrees to germinate. And when my house is no higher than 72, there's no way it's going to germinate properly. And so I am considering buying a heat mat this year. The other things that you might need are seed starting trays with humidity domes. And you can find those at your local Walmart or your Home Depot. You can buy them online at Amazon. There are lots of places to get seed starting kits that have all of the trays and domes. But that's what I need to be looking for in the month of February. That's what I need to be doing. I've already started a great deal of it. In fact, I've got the layout completely done. I've got my calendar set up with all of my start dates. I just need to set up my grow station now and get some of those things ordered and purchased that I will be needing when I start my seeds in March. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. I hope it hasn't been too confusing, and by no means am I an expert on this stuff. In fact, I think this is my 5th year of gardening, and I am learning new things every single year, and I'm learning things that I've been doing wrong. And so that's the whole fun of gardening, is that kind of experimentation, learning from your mistakes, and just having fun with it and getting something in the process that you can enjoy and eat and love the beauty of. And so I hope that if this video was helpful for you, that you will give it a like, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down in the description. I would be happy to help you with whatever I can. And I just appreciate you being here. I hope you have a lovely day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.